in the squadron. They called him Bullets, but we call him Greg Kelly. Greg Kelly is on the air
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Walz. His name is Walz, the wacko weirdo from Minnesota. Walz. Tim Walz is the vice presidential nominee for Kamala Harris, and he is going to be an outright disaster. I have not felt this good. I've not felt this confident about Donald Trump's chances for re-election since the day after he was almost assassinated, quite frankly. It was a bad, dark day, but it was also a glorious day at the same time, and it was like, yeah, everybody kind of felt that. It's one of the reasons why Joe Biden had to get out of the race right away. This is good. A couple of things going on here. The guy is totally insane, wacko. He may look like a regular guy. He's not. I don't know why he flipped his lid, but he flipped his lid a long time ago. He may look like a moderate. He may look like your social studies teacher. He actually does literally. He was a social studies teacher. He looks like a social studies teacher. He even looks like a social studies teacher I had. A cross between Mr. Powers and Mr. Denley in Garden City Junior High. He's the same guy. But his days of being a middle-of-the-road kind of guy died a long time ago. He ran for Congress in his 40s, early 40s. Not quite a career politician, but pretty much. Spent about 10 years in the House of Representatives, then becomes governor, and then really loses his mind. Wacko, beyond belief, nut job crazy, far left lunatic. Now, like, for instance, here's one of his signature issues. You ready? I mean, I'm not overstating it. Far left lunatic weirdo. Okay. He advocated. He proposed. And then he signed into law legislation that mandates, are you ready for this, that tampons be distributed in the boys' room of public schools for children as young as 4th grade through senior year of high school. Boys, tampons in the boys' room. Why the hell would you do that? I mean, really, why would you do that? In his demented, sick mind, it's for the girls who suddenly decide to identify as boys, right? So they're trans and they want to go to the boys' room, but they're still going to have their periods, so they should not be inconvenienced. They should have tampons right there. This is totally insane, bananas, nut job, cuckoo, crazy. And that's who he is. It's pretty amazing. I mean, look, you got to run like you're behind. You got to fight like crazy. But this is an amazing sign. This shows you that Kamala Harris, a couple of things. She's a leftist lunatic herself, and also they're somewhat afraid of the people even further left than they are. And by those, I'm talking about the overt anti-Semites, the overt people who are rooting for the terrorists in Gaza, right? Those people are they're Democrats, or they certainly identify as Democrats. They are controlling the agenda in the Democrat Party. And Kamala, and now this guy, they got to listen to them, if not outright adopt what they're doing. The whole idea of Todd Shapiro. Was that his name? Todd Shapiro? Tim Shapiro? Josh Shapiro. Josh Shapiro. He's the governor of Pennsylvania. So that guy apparently has real political talent. People like him, think he's a nice guy. He's not crazy. However, he is Jewish. Now, I don't have a problem with that. You don't have a problem with that. I don't even like saying I don't have a problem with it. I mean, it's fine. It's great. Tells me he believes in God. I don't know. It's just fine. I would never think twice. I would never, ever, ever think twice about that guy's religion. But for the left, it would be a ultra big deal. They would be totally furious, and they would ruin the Chicago convention. They were planning to ruin it if a Jew were named as the Democrat vice presidential nominee, because, and this guy, not only is he Jewish, but he actually volunteered for the Israeli army. This guy would have been a real pain in the neck for us, okay? Pennsylvania, he probably could have helped win that. Kamala needs Pennsylvania. This seems to be off the table at this point, and I'm feeling good. Oh, the other thing about this guy, he let Minneapolis burn. He was one of those guys who was, George Floyd, oh my gosh, we have to allow the people to express their feeling, and we need to. No, you don't. You got to maintain law and order. That's what you guys are really there for, right? I mean, we don't imagine a governor messing around in the boys' room and not deploying the National Guard during a series of events, total civil unrest. What kind of system is that? Well, it's a system where he will be rejected by the American people. I hope. It certainly feels that way. If we get that stuff in front of them, really in front, I don't see how Trump loses, unless, of course, they cheat. And it's okay to talk about Governor Kemp. Did we do that yesterday? Did I play my Governor Kemp stuff? I don't think we got to it. The Governor Kemp stuff, what that guy did to Trump over the past couple of months, and his little sidekick there, Mrs. Kemp. Why the hell would you come out against Trump? They both did. Kemp, the Kemps. And Trump came after them and he's got to do stuff like that. I like it. I like it a lot. Let me see here. What have we got? Let's just try. Here he is making excuses for the rioters. This is Tim Walz. Hey, what else do we have to know about him? He's 60 years old. He has 2 kids. I guess they're in college now. One of them is a radical leftist herself. Sorry, but, when you get into the national eye, we're allowed to talk about you. All right. Hey, I had a prominent, my dad's prominent. Remember when I went through my stuff? Yeah, everybody wrote a damn newspaper article about it, right? So I can talk about this. The daughter was tipping off her radical friends and saying, don't worry, my dad is not dispatching the National Guard. He's only saying that so he appears tough. I know he waited 2 days anyway, so he's on his side, on your side. They're not coming tonight, even though he just said they would. That's something else. Listen to this. This is 2020, cut 25, Tim Walz. Go ahead.
A society that does not put equity and inclusion at the center of it is certainly going to eventually come to the places where we're at. This is a moment of inflection. It's a moment of real change. It's a moment that those folks who are out there demanding this are not going to take a commission or a report. They're going to want fundamental change.
Well, that's where you come in and maintain order, you dummy. They can basically sanctioning the rioting. Oh, yeah, diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is so needed. What a fraud that whole George Floyd thing was. How about this? I'd like to stop the illegal aliens, right? There was a time when Chuck Schumer supported a border fence, also known as a wall. So did Barack Obama, a border fence. Listen to what this guy says about the plan to build a wall at the border. Tim Walz, 60 years old, basically a career politician. Oh, and a borderline fake veteran like Pete Buttigieg. I'll get to that in a second. Cut 28.
He talks about this wall. I always say, let me know how high it is. If it's 25 feet, then I'll invest in the 30-foot ladder factory. That's not how you stop this. You stop this using electronics. You stop it using more border control agents. And you stop it by having a legal system that allows for that tradition of allowing folks to come here, just like my relatives did, to come here, be able to work and establish the American dream. He's not interested in that. He wants to demonize. Look, we produce most of the turkeys that you're going to eat in Thanksgiving. Those are immigrants working hard, establishing themselves here. What's he going to do? Is he going to take them all out?
He talks pretty fast, doesn't he? It's the part at the beginning. All right. Listen to this one more time. Then we'll only play about 4 seconds. Cut 28.
He talks about this wall. I always say, let me know how high it is. If it's 25 feet, then I'll invest in the 30-foot ladder factory. That's not how you stop this.
Stop! You get it? 20-foot wall. He's going to buy a 30-foot ladder factory so they can get in here illegally. What is your problem? What is wrong with you? Did your parents come here illegally? Did they sneak in? No, they actually probably came. I would bet money. How much money? Well, let's look it up right now. Where did his parents come from, or his grandparents came from? Just looking at them, I'm guessing somewhere in Europe, okay? I don't think they came via the Rio Grande. They came through Ellis Island, which was a very restrictive system. And yes, we weeded some people out. We sent them back, and you had tuberculosis. They would put you over here for 6 months. It was an organized system, you dummy. This guy is the worst. And part of it is this. To be relevant these days in the Democrat Party as a white man, you must go totally insane, nutjob bananas, cuckoo crazy, left to be accepted. Why do you think Chuck Schumer is pushing all this crap? You think Chuck Schumer believes in any of this stuff? No, but that's where it's at right now. And to be relevant, to retain your whiteness, if you will, and retain your masculinity, you have to, in a sense, reject it and adopt the far left agenda. Let's see here. Oh, he thinks he did. You saw the damage, right? You saw the damage in Minneapolis and beyond. There was this amazing movie called The Fall of Minneapolis. Sorry, I'm excited. The Fall of Minneapolis was made about the death and destruction that happened in the wake of George Floyd and this guy's complete negligence, willful negligence in restoring law and order. Cut 31, please. Cut 31.
Floyd shocked not just Minnesota nor the nation. It shocked the world. And the civil unrest that ensued from that was probably some of the greatest that we've seen both in this nation and globally. And that operation involving dozens of local, county, and then the state, involving multiple states in the region, and involving the federal government, had to be assembled, had to be coordinated, and had to make sure that we brought order back. I'll be the first to tell you, that's terrifying for Minnesotans in those days. Nothing like this had been seen before at the level of violence after the murder of George Floyd. I think, again, there'll be stories written, and this will be written about for quite some time. I'm proud of Minnesota's response.
You see what he was doing there was justifying the delay. We had to coordinate. We had to get all these various, disparate parties involved. We had to tell them what to do. Therefore, it took 72 hours. It took a big fat delay. No, he was essentially egging them on. Now, I have some footage here. This is actually hard to find right now because the local news stations remove these clips from their websites. But this is basically, regular anchors in Minneapolis. Picture, Rosanna Scotto and me in the day, or Ernie Anastas, right? Just sitting there on the news desk. And this is what they were going through. Cut 32, please.
I'm just furiously checking Twitter, trying to find out, has the National Guard said anything? Has Mayor Fry said anything? Has the governor said anything? The last tweet we have from the National Guard says, as citizens in Minneapolis and St. Paul observe a temporary curfew, the National Guard will be out helping to restore order and provide safety in the community. Rest assured, we are standing watch. That was 4 hours ago.
Well, standing watch isn't good enough when you've got a crowd like this, when you consider what we've seen over the last 3 nights, that to let a situation, and hopefully it won't get any more out of hand than what we've seen so far. But this is not what the governor said earlier today. He said we would not see a repeat, and we see this curfew obviously did not hold. There's so many people that were.
That's those are straight news anchors, and they're completely dismayed about the lack of response. And then here is these governors, they kind of lose all sense of proportionality. They start to think that they're like viceroys or something like that. They get the special house, and they get state troopers with them and all this stuff, and they think they're like little mini kings and queens. They're not. You guys got to keep the state parks in order, okay, and the prisons and a few other things, and leave it at that. No, you're going to tell us how to live, and you're going to become social justice warriors, and it rubs off. The First Lady. This is the first. Stop at the First Lady. First Lady of Minnesota. You mean the governor's wife? No big deal. Cut 33, please. Her name is Gwen.
I would say those first days, when there were riots, I could smell the burning tires. And that was a very real thing. And I kept the windows open for as long as I could because I felt like that was such a touchstone of what was happening.
You ever smell a burnt tire? It stinks. It's foul. Keeping it open. Wow. Marie Antoinette in her castle, keeping it open. Driver's licenses for illegal aliens, he's done that. Transgender surgery for children, he supports that. BLM riots, burning our streets, totally in. Kamala's first decision, as my friend DC Drano writes, as a presidential candidate, and she went far, far left. First big decision, and she blew it. Be right back.
Greg Kelly
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
All right. Hey, what does his opponent, Vance, say about this guy? Vance is like a million times the intellect that Tim Walz is. He's sometimes you find these radical liberals that are in their own demented way kind of brilliant. This guy is not. Let's see here. J.D. Vance. Where's the J.D. Vance thing? Let's try this one. Cut 30, please. Cut 30.
I think that you guys have got to do a better job at actually forcing Kamala Harris to answer questions. This is a person who's been the presumptive Democrat nominee for 16 days. She hasn't taken a single real question from a reporter. The American people deserve to get to know the people who want to lead them, and I think it's shameful for Kamala Harris, but increasingly for the media, that she's taking a basement strategy of running from reporters instead of getting in front of them, answering tough questions about her record, and letting the American people know who she is. President Trump and I take hostile questions, we take non-hostile questions, we get out there and talk to people because we respect the American people enough to want to persuade them and not to try to run from them. So I think you guys got to do a better job. That's my humble opinion. Thank you guys. Thank you.
Good for him. That's true. Totally true. Now, he weighs in on, this is the part where I think he weighs in on Walz. Did you get that yet? He says all kinds of things about, he's going to sit down for a debate. It's funny. You know, Vance, according to the mainstream media, he's the liability of a vice presidential candidate because he said something semi-obnoxious on a talk show 6 years ago. Yet this Walz dude signs a law mandating tampons in the boys' bathroom. What kind of pervert? That's perverted stuff. That is absolutely. If you were on a school board, say, in 2005, and you came together with something like that, you could damn near be arrested for child endangerment or perversion or something. All right, here's Vance now, a little bit more about Kamala and not the media this time, Kamala and Walz. Go ahead. Okay, we'll get back to you on that one. He's talking in his campaign plane. Hey, that's a big draw of why these people want these big jobs. Not Vance, but Democrats in general, especially Kamala. They love the planes and they love those dark SUVs. It's really not such a big deal. It's not worth selling your soul for, but some of these people have no soul. All right, J.D. Vance, now we're ready. Go ahead.
This is a guy who's proposed shipping more manufacturing jobs to China, who wants to make the American people more reliant on garbage energy instead of good American energy, and has proposed defunding the police just as Kamala Harris does. I think it's interesting, actually. They make an interesting tag team because, of course, Tim Walz allowed rioters to burn down Minneapolis in the summer of 2020, and then the few who got caught, Kamala Harris helped bail them out of jail.
Yeah! You nailed it, pal. Be right back.
Greg Kelly
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Now, basically, anybody who serves in uniform, you cut them a lot of slack, and you give them credit, right? Except when they deliberately took a shortcut to avoid the most arduous aspects of military service, i.e., fighting in a war. I got to admit, when I joined the military, I wasn't chomping at the bit to go to Iraq. Okay, that was not something I really particularly wanted to do. I wanted to learn how to fly. I wanted to wear cool uniforms, travel the world, have some fun, make some money. And if I had to go to war, shoot, okay, I guess I have to. I mean, I'm being honest with you. I did not I want to go fight for my country. I mean, yes, that was part of it, but it wasn't the top part. I think it's okay to say that. But I understood, you gotta go. You gotta go. You can't take all the benefits and all the perks of military life, which there are some, by the way, and also lots of drawbacks too, even in peacetime. You gotta live in a, cramped quarters. I was in a, this studio, maybe picture a school bus, a regular school bus. Now cut it in half. No, that's not a good example. Picture, trying to figure out how to describe how big what is an office that we all go? Okay. Picture your typical men's room in a building, in an office building, right? Cut it in half and now put 4 guys in there. That's where I lived for about a year with 4 guys in a room that big. It was unpleasant. It was really, really bad, but you gotta do it. There were times where things were great. I got to hang out on the beach in San Diego. Sure, I flew a plane that tended to crash a lot, but it was what I chose to do. So this guy, Tim Walz, bails on the National Guard, makes a huge, huge deal throughout his career. I was a National Guardsman. I was a sergeant major in the National Guard. Yeah, right up until it was time to go to Iraq. And then he quits. So this is an independent journalist put this together in Minnesota. And they talked to one of his old Army buddies. Again, this was the National Guard of Minnesota. A lot of people join, for the college benefits, and I get that. I'm sure, whatever. But you make a commitment. You got to follow through. All right, you ready for this? Go ahead. This is the Tim Walz story.
The public needs to know how pathetic his leadership was as a National Guardsman.
On a 150-year-old farm in Brewster, Tom Behrens hopes his tell-it-like-it-is style will finally get the attention he believes it deserves in Minnesota's race for governor. In a way, he's back again to wage a public war of words against Tim Walz.
He abandoned us. What the hell kind of leader does that? He just, as soon as the shots were fired in Iraq, he turned and ran the other way and hung his hat up and quit.
We'll get to Behrens' new message for voters in a moment. But this all starts years earlier when Behrens says Walz's misleading statements about his military service first led him to come forward in the fall of 2018.
So you try to get this message out, but Minnesota's largest newspaper checks it out, says it's 100% true, but yet refuses to print.
When I hung the phone up, I said, what the hell is this, North Korea?
Back in 2005, a warning order went out to the 1st Battalion, 125th Field Artillery to mobilize for a mission to Iraq. At the time, Walz served as the unit's highest non-commissioned officer, but months later, Walz would retire from the Guard, avoid the deployment, and run for Congress. Tom Behrens was next in line for the position and was asked to take his place.
I was like, well, for Pete's sake, this guy quit. And if I say I'm not going to do it, what the hell kind of leadership is that? If a company would say that we're going to deploy to Iraq or somewhere and you're going to be gone for whatever amount of time, and then the foreman just says, no, I'm not going. What does that say to the 500 people that work in that factory?
Behrens would go on to serve in Iraq on a nearly 2-year deployment as a command sergeant major. All while Walz began using that title as a congressman. Behrens says he first contacted Walz with his concerns, sending these letters to Washington. They all went unanswered.
But then we fast forward to the election in 2018 in Minnesota, and you try at that time to get people's attention with this story and also with what seems to be a very misleading statement that he continued to make about his service.
It kind of just sat there. When he was a congressman, he bragged that he was a retired command sergeant major. I'm the highest ranking person ever in the House, and all this lie that he was telling. The state of Minnesota came out after 2018, after this was exposed, and they said, well, he can say that he served as a command sergeant major, but he can't say he's a retired one because he's not.
And that's what he was saying.
And he was saying that, and there was lots of lots of cards coming in the mail, for him to be elected. They said right on there he's a retired command sergeant major, just tooting his own horn, just hanging on the coattails of people that actually are command sergeant majors that went through all the process and put all the time in.
A spokesperson for the Minnesota National Guard said Walz wasn't able to retire as a command sergeant major since he failed to complete coursework and requirements related to the rank. Verified documents show the Army corrected his service record. Walz was reduced in rank to an E8 Master Sergeant after retirement.
Stop for a second. Some of this stuff isn't the biggest deal in the world, to be honest. Master Sergeant, Command Master Sergeant, it's not that big a deal. Retired or former or ex-sergeant major, it's not that big. The thing that gets me, and they're getting to it, is the whole thing about leaving the unit just before the big deployment to Iraq. That's the issue. All right. And it's all over. It's funny. They're making a bigger deal in a positive way about his military service than Vance. And Vance, no kidding, was a Marine. All right, let's face it. You give the edge to the Marines when it comes Marines versus National Guard. A little bit of an edge. And the guy was in Iraq for nearly a year. And that's kind of a big deal. And I'm not saying, he deserves another medal for it or anything like that. But a little bit of coverage, a little bit of respect. It's funny. when Pete Buttigieg ran, he spent about 5 months in Afghanistan as a reservist. I told you about that. He didn't go to boot camp. He took a crazy shortcut into the military, and it was personally offensive to me what he did and how he bragged about it. But the media were so infatuated with his military service, in part because, well, number one, a Democrat. Number two, gay. That was a big part of his appeal for the political press. And they talked more about his 5 months in Afghanistan than they had talked about John McCain's 5 years in Vietnam. In fact, Pete Buttigieg brought up his military service 10 times more than John McCain brought up his military service when he was running for president in 2008 during the primary. Isn't that wild? I mean, that's, and the media let him get away with it. 'Cause they often don't know better, but they're hideously biased. All right, keep going with this.
And his conditional promotion. Alpha News again asked Governor Walz if he's using the command sergeant major rank on his campaign website for political gain this year. A spokesperson said this has been in the news before and pointed us to a past story where Walz said, quote, "Normally this type of partisan political attack only comes from one who's never worn a uniform."
It's stolen valor is really what it is. I don't know of anybody else that's done what he's done, but we called it the truth about Tim Walz.
In 2018, Barron's gave the story the full court press.
We, retired command sergeant majors of the Minnesota National Guard, feel it is our duty and responsibility to bring forth the truth as we know it concerning his service record. I put together information on it and I sent it out to every single radio station and newspaper and TV station I could in the state. The bottom line in all of this is gut-wrenching and sad to explain. When the nation called, he quit.
Twin Cities TV stations and the Star Tribune were silent, even after Barron says the newspaper checked it all out. The Star Tribune endorsed Walz in 2018 for governor. Between lockdowns, riots, unchecked crime, and a charred police precinct, Barron's felt he had no choice but again to come forward.
All right, let's turn the volume down on that for a moment because we have one of the great big political journalists of all time with us, Mark Halpern. Once again, go to walkingduck.com/Mark, walkingduck.com/Mark for some of the greatest political content in the world. Mark, how are you? How's this decision going over with this Walz guy?
Well, the Republicans are unified. Every Republican I know is as gleeful as they are in Mar-a-Lago, where they're breaking out the margarita machine. Democrats are divided, and it's not like the fringe Democrats. I think it's a bad idea. A lot of Democrats think bad idea. They're saying, if you didn't want to pick Shapiro, pick somebody else. Don't double down on the very thing you're going to be attacked for. This is not about Walz and whether America will fall in love with him or not, or whether he's folksy or whether he looks good at the Minnesota State Fair. This is about what Veep Stakes is always about, perceptions about the judgment of the top of the ticket. Is he qualified to be president based on his resume? I think most people are going to say yes. But are his positions so liberal that she's now allowed the Trump campaign to say she chose a partner who teams with her to produce the most liberal ticket in modern America? Yes. And so I'm talking to Democrats who are apoplectic about this, who are not, inclined to be negative, who want to beat Trump very badly. And they just think this is a disaster. And that's a word that I'm hearing in words like it from a lot of Democrats. There are some who are enthusiastic, but I can't really figure out why they're enthusiastic. It's at best, as best I can tell, a waste of a pick that won't really have much to do to whether she wins or not.
Wow.
And by passing on Shapiro, they passed on a guy who could help them win the state that's most important. And someone who's one of the real stars of the Democratic Party. People like this guy. People think he's a nice guy, that he does have elements of his bio, military service and some more cultural things that, make him seem more of middle America than of a coast, for sure. But he's just got too many liberal issue positions to avoid what I think's, what's already happening, which is Mar-a-Lago is saying she's doubled down on being crazy progressive.
Totally fascinating. Now, what about this? If they had gone with Shapiro, my hunch was that was going to be a disaster because the far left was going to be really, really upset. And I still think that's true. Is that why they didn't pick him?
I don't know why they didn't. I mean, there's 6 or 7 reasons. Look, the guy was subjected to enormous pummeling in the New York Times, the Philadelphia Inquirer, by John Fetterman, his home state senator, for half dozen reasons. Worries about how his religion would play, worries about how his positions on Israel would play, worries about his ambition, worries about some other things from his background on school vouchers, etc. But again, people say he is the risky choice. To me, Walz is a much riskier choice.
Wow.
Much riskier. And Marla, far lower upside. But I'll say also, if she didn't think Shapiro was good, she could have found a third person. She didn't need to say, well, okay, we can't pick the governor of Pennsylvania who's got a 60% approval rating, so let's go pick someone more liberal than me.
Did they give themselves an artificial deadline, number one, with this Tuesday rally? I mean, couldn't they have waited? And the other thing, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about the vetting process. I think you've said before publicly, the vetting for vice president is like nothing anyone's ever gone through. And I'm curious about that. Does the FBI, did they get did they do that?
No, not the FBI. It's a law firm. The FBI doesn't do this for anybody. In terms of your first question I'm blanking on your first question. Asked me about the vet, but what was your first question? If you don't remember either, I'm not answering.
well, the vetting is done by a law, but by
So I'm reading this thing by this very smart Democratic writer, Matthew Iglesias, and he says he's writing a list of things about the pick, and he says because the guy's run several times before, you can be sure he's been vetted. It's just not the case. It's just, as we saw last weekend when Kamala Harris's husband, a fact came out about his past that had never been disclosed. Until you run for vice president, you're not getting a full vet, and then he'd be president's even a different level than that. I know. You asked me about the artificial deadline. They became convinced that they had to do this virtual roll call in order to get him nominated by virtual roll call and on the ballot in Ohio. Most of the lawyers don't agree. It's the fastest vet in American history. I would be stunned if they found everything about this guy. But you don't need to. If he does have vetting issues that come out now, it'll only compound the problem. The main problem is he's just got too many liberal issue positions. It doesn't make sense. She needs every Democratic consultant I know, no matter what their ideology, says she has to signal some centrist views and sort of a centrist stance. Her best opportunity to do that was to pick someone who isn't the Bernie Sanders endorsed candidate, and yet she chose the Bernie Sanders endorsed candidate.
And what is it? I know we don't know everything, but she was under pressure, right? From from a lot of different people, different sides, different constituencies. Yeah. What does it say about her? What can we say it says about her?
What it says to many of my Democratic sources is that the left can roll her, and they'll continue to roll her during the campaign. That if they rolled her on this at a time of her maximum strength, I mean, she's having the honeymoon of all honeymoons. If they could roll her now on this, they'll roll her on policy for the whole year, and she won't go to the center on immigration or anything else where people widely expect her to try to find some more moderate stance and separate herself from the liberal record of the administration in which she served. So I don't know. I don't want to overstate it. Somebody pointed out to me, what if he gives a great speech tonight? What if he comes out at this announcement event and just knocks everybody's socks off? That'll be good for him. But if the point of picking a running mate, and it is to signal to the country good judgment, most of the Democrats I've talked to, most, not all, but most say this doesn't reflect good judgment. This reflects being rolled by the left, being afraid of having a strong number two in Shapiro, and not understanding the necessity, if you want to win the election, of winning Pennsylvania and of signaling to the center of the country to independents. I may have taken some really liberal positions in the past, but that's not all that I'm about.
Last thing, Mark, the vetting. I am hearing that, she's the sitting vice president, but she may not have been vetted as thoroughly as she should have been. Correct. And they're very worried about what's going to come out on her still.
Yes.
Wow. Any rumblings you're hearing about what the nature of the problem?
Yes.
You can't share right now.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we can't wait. I mean, it's all fascinating. And Mark Halpern, nobody knows the country like Mark Halpern right now. You're amazing. Everybody should go to walkingduck.com/Mark. Walkingduck.com/Mark. We appreciate it very much, sir.
Thanks, Greg. We'll see you on the two-way.
I love it. Oh yeah, the two-way thing is awesome. See you later. What do you think? What's going to come out on, what could it be? What do you think he's talking about, Diego?
No idea.
Something.
But I like the suspense.
Yeah, right? And he answered in the affirmative. You can't say that, right? And he said yes, which is true. Yes, I can say that. Good stuff. Wow. All right. So this, even the Democrats know, and they're freaking out. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I'll be right back.
Greg Kelly
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Yeah, this is really something. The daughter, her name is Hope. Sorry, the daughter of the governor of Minnesota was tweeting to all of her radical friends, don't worry, you can riot like crazy tonight because the National Guard is not coming. My dad just told me. How about that one? All right, what do you guys think about this? Frank, you're in Bayville. Hello.
Hey, Greg, how's it going? Thanks for taking my call. I wanted to raise a little awareness. I'm not sure if everyone heard about what happened last night here in Nassau County, but we want to vote 12-0 for making mask wearing illegal. Now, I just want to remind everybody that you weren't allowed to go to school, which is a publicly funded event there. You weren't allowed to go into places of business if you did not wear a mask. But now it is against the law to wear a mask. I find it ironic, and I wanted to hear what you thought about it.
Yeah, I saw that, and I saw that there were a couple of mask enthusiasts at the county hearing who kind of raised hell, right? We're knocking chairs over and stuff like that. I think it's great. I think it should be outlawed wearing a mask in public. I mean, who wears masks? The bad guys, the bandits, right? You can't, especially now we need these, you need your face exposed for facial technology recognition. When can you wear a mask though? When could you wear a mask? I mean,
well, if you're compromised, if you're a health risk, or they said if it's what is that? If it's an event like Halloween or something, obviously.
Yeah. If you're going shopping at a jewelry store, you shouldn't be wearing a mask. I think everybody understands. I think it's a great thing. Bruce Blakeman's doing a great job. And thank you for reminding us about that. Rob, hello.
Hey, Greg, how you doing? I heard about Walz being picked and reminded about how his favoritism of illegal migration, illegal immigrants. And my comment was that I think citizenship should mean something. There was a study in 2014 in California where of all the traffic stops by the police, 65% were illegal citizens. 95% of them didn't buy the car insurance. And I don't even know if they're going to driver's ed, but I think that should be a narrative that, you got to play by the same rules. Same thing applies to the costs at the hospitals. These are huge costs, and who it should be asked, who's paying for this? Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, before you go, 2014 was the California study?
Yep.
All right. I'm going to check that out. That is amazing. Man, oh man, look at those numbers. And why is he so emphatic on giving out, driver's licenses to illegals? It's weird. The agenda is strange. And again, I do think a lot of this is, the guy came from a farm in Nebraska. I mean, how liberal are you when you grow up there, right? But if you want currency in today's Democrat Party and you happen to be a white, older gentleman, you go all in on the woke stuff. And I mean all in. We have new video of Kamala espousing woke. It's like nothing you've ever heard before when we come back.